Zagarri. I'm a professor of history at George Mason University, one of the last students of Edmund S. Morgan of Yale University.
Why was he such an influential historian? Can you count for it?
He had an extremely long career that began in the 1940s with the publication of The Puritan Family, which was a path-breaking work that didn't look at abstract Puritan religious ideas about predestination or Calvinism, but looked at how ordinary Puritans lived in their family life, how their religious beliefs affected the way they related to their husbands and wives, parents and children. He talked about how Puritans, even though they lived in this very patriarchal society, the husbands and wives often treated each other as equals because they were equal in the sight of God. And so he began his career with talking about ordinary people, and then in the middle of his career, he revolutionized our ideas about the American Revolution by talking about the Stamp Act crisis and about the way in which ordinary people and British officials and Americans interacted to oppose taxation without representation. And then by the end of his career, he wrote American Slavery, American Freedom, which posed very starkly the paradox that the people who fought for their own liberty against Great Britain were at the same time enslaving black people, and how and why it was that Virginians, who were among the foremost leaders of the American Revolution, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, etc., Patrick Henry, themselves owned slaves, and how that heightened their own desire for white freedom.
If you were trying to account for what gave him these great insights, what would you say?
Well, you can't account for genius, but I think that...
Was it spending a lot of time in the archives? You talk to some historians and they'll say, I just go into the library, I commune with these documents, and out comes this narrative.
Yeah. Morgan was always aware of what other historians were writing, but he himself believed that the primary sources would give you the answers, and that you should start with the primary sources and end with the primary sources, and that he always said you should read the primary sources, and if you come across something that surprises you, you should take note of that. Think about why. Think about, whether this is something that's new that historians haven't talked about, or whether it's something other historians have, and that's where you go to the secondary literature. But he was not driven by historiography. He was driven by, the questions he found in the primary sources. So,
some great historians are hard to deal with in person. Some are just lovely. Which kind was he?
He was definitely on the lovely end of the spectrum, very humane man, a modest person, unpretentious. He just believed that writing history should be accessible to a larger audience. His prose just was simple and beautiful. He really disguised all the hard work, the perspiration that went into writing the history, all the research that went into it. And he told stories, but stories that had incredible moral significance, as well as profoundly situating the past in its own times. He wanted to write accessible history. He wanted to write history that would really help us, not presentist in the sense that tell us the answers to present day questions, but speak to the present by understanding the past.
Great.